There is an uncomfortable contradiction that very few people dare to say out loud. Many people do not lack dreams at all. They know who they could become. They can clearly picture a better life they want to reach. Yet day after day, they remain where they are. Not because they are irresponsible, not because they are unintelligent, but because every single day they are waiting for a feeling that has never arrived. If you look closely, you will see this everywhere. People who want to change their lives but keep saying today is not the right time. People with clear plans who still postpone them every morning until tomorrow. People who believe that once they are more ready, once they have more motivation, once everything falls into place, action will naturally follow. The problem is that this feeling rarely appears, and even when it does, it lasts only briefly before fading away. Meanwhile, time continues to move forward. Many people believe their greatest enemy is laziness. But laziness is only the surface. What truly keeps them stuck lies much deeper. It is the belief that action must come after emotion, that they need to feel right before they begin. If they do not feel inspired today, waiting one more day will not really matter. Here is the paradox. The greater the ambition, the easier it becomes to fall into waiting. The more clearly people imagine a perfect future version of themselves, the harder it is for them to accept small, modest steps in the present. And so they procrastinate, not because they hate action, but because they want action to feel meaningful from the very beginning. But the world does not operate that way. Strength does not arrive with inspiration. Change does not begin at the moment you finally feel ready. It begins with actions so small that you almost dismiss them as unimportant. Long before modern society spoke about motivation, productivity, or self-improvement, samurai warriors were already confronting this very problem. They understood that acting only when the mind felt cooperative would never take them far. So they did not build their lives around emotion. They built them around what could be repeated every day. And perhaps what is holding you still is not laziness at all. Perhaps your ambition, when not guided in the right way, has quietly become the thing that binds you in place. In a small village at the foot of the mountains lived a samurai who had trained with the sword for many years. He was no longer young, but not yet old. He was not weak, nor was he lacking in understanding. He had studied under many teachers, read many books, carefully observed countless duels, and memorized even the smallest details of how others moved. From the outside, no one would ever have thought of him as lazy. Yet over the years, his skill barely changed. Those who came after him, some with far less experience, gradually surpassed him. First one, then two, then an entire group. They were not more intelligent than he was. They did not use more sophisticated strategies. There was only one very small difference between them. They trained consistently. Whenever the samurai sensed that he was falling behind, he searched for a new approach. He replaced his sword, believing the right weapon would accelerate his progress. When that brought no results, he changed teachers, hoping a new guide would reveal a better path. When dissatisfaction remained, he changed methods, adding more theory, more analysis, more planning. But there was one thing he never changed: his training frequency. Some days he trained for long hours. Other days he did not train at all. Some days he felt energized and focused. Other days he felt tired and chose to skip it. He failed to realize that this very inconsistency was what kept him behind. Meanwhile, the other samurai trained at the same hour every day. Not longer, not shorter. No need to feel special. They did not ask whether today was the right day to train. They trained simply because that was what they always did. After many years, the samurai began to face a difficult truth. He did not lack effort. He lacked consistency. He had tried very hard, but not in a way that could build real strength. His scattered efforts accumulated into nothing. They dissolved the moment his emotions shifted. And in that moment, he finally understood that his problem had never been a lack of ambition. The problem was that he trusted big bursts of effort instead of small actions repeated every single day. After realizing this, the question is no longer why the samurai failed to improve. The question becomes why those with the greatest ambition so often move the slowest. This pattern does not belong only to the martial path. It appears wherever people pursue change. Ambitious people rarely think small. They form a clear image of who they want to become in the future. They can already see the outcome, the position, the recognition, and because the destination is so vivid, the small steps leading toward it begin to feel insignificant. A minor action seems unworthy of the grand dream they carry. Ambition creates an invisible standard. Every action must feel meaningful. Every effort must feel justified. If a step does not seem large enough, it is easily dismissed with the promise that something better will be done tomorrow. But that tomorrow rarely arrives. It is like someone who wants to build a solid house but grows impatient placing each brick. In their mind, the house already stands complete. In reality, no foundation exists. And because they refuse to accept the slowness of the process, they remain watching their dream exist only in imagination. This is why many people mistake procrastination for laziness. In truth, they procrastinate because they do not want to face the ordinariness of early steps. They want progress to look like progress. But the truth is that progress rarely feels exciting. And at that point, ambition, the very force meant to pull people forward, quietly becomes the force that keeps them standing still. Because they understood this, the samurai did not try to defeat laziness with sheer willpower. Nor did they wait for an ideal mental state before beginning. Instead, they organized their lives in a way that removed emotion from the role of decision-maker. In the training halls, practice times were clearly set. Not convenient times, not inspired times, simply training times. When that moment arrived, they stood up and stepped onto the ground regardless of how the day had unfolded. There were no questions, no negotiations. This was not rigidity, but realism. Samurai understood that if they argued with themselves each day about whether to train or not, they would quickly become exhausted. So they removed the argument from the beginning. Training was not a choice, it was part of life. Emotions change. Some days the body feels heavy, some days the mind is scattered. But the training hour still comes just as the sun still rises. And it is this non-negotiable repetition that creates the strength outsiders often mistake for iron discipline. In truth, samurai did not conquer laziness. They built a rhythm of life in which laziness had no opportunity to speak. When action becomes habit, emotion becomes secondary, no longer the one in control. And it is at this point that the samurai path begins to diverge from the way modern people continue to try to change themselves. From the way samurai structured their daily lives, one truth gradually became clear. Their strength did not come from explosive bursts of effort. It came from small actions repeated so often that they no longer required thought. This is what later came to be known as Kaizen. But to the samurai, it was not a method. It was simply the way they lived. In some training halls, students were assigned tasks that seemed almost too simple. Not practicing many sword forms, not sparring, just holding a stance. Every day at the same time, maintain a single position, no increase, no variation. At first, it felt meaningless. The body was not very tired. The mind was not stimulated. There was no clear sense of progress. But day after day, the body began to adapt. Muscles became more stable. Breathing grew steadier. Impatience slowly faded. What mattered most was that no day was skipped. Not because of fatigue, not because of busyness, not because of a bad mood. This unbroken continuity created a foundation that outsiders rarely noticed. Kaizen does not ask you to be strong. It does not demand iron discipline or extraordinary willpower. It asks for only one thing. Do not skip the day. When an action is small enough, the mind does not resist. Emotion does not need to be persuaded. The action simply happens. Over time, these small changes accumulate, quietly, without display. Yet they create a difference that no single great effort could ever replace. And it is here that Kaizen reveals its true power. Not because it is fast, but because it never stops. When Kaizen is understood as a rhythm of life, the samurai no longer see laziness as an enemy to be destroyed. They understand that laziness appears not because people are weak, but because the task in front of them is too large for their current state. When the distance between where one stands and where one wants to go becomes too great, the body and mind instinctively resist. Instead of forcing themselves through that resistance, samurai choose a far simpler approach. They reduce the action until it no longer feels threatening. Not hours of training, no visible progress. Just a beginning so small that there is no reason to refuse it. When a student feels heavy and unwilling to train, his teacher does not scold him. He simply asks the student to enter the hall and perform one familiar movement. No more, no less. When that movement is complete, the training is considered finished. Often once started, the student continues a little further. but continuation is never required. Samurai understand that the hardest part is not doing a lot, but starting. Once action begins, even in the smallest form, natural momentum appears. And it is this momentum that replaces what modern people call motivation. In everyday life today, the same principle still applies. Someone who wants to write but feels resistant does not need to write much. Just a short passage. Someone who wants to train does not need to complete a full session, just one movement. When the action is small enough, laziness has no reason to exist. So laziness is not a signal that you should stop. It is simply a signal that your step has grown too large. Adjust the size of the action and the path ahead opens naturally once again. When small actions are repeated long enough, something important begins to happen. The inner struggle gradually fades. There is no longer a question each morning about whether to act or not. There is no sense of forcing oneself forward. Action unfolds naturally as part of the day itself. Many people fear discipline because they see it as a form of confinement. They imagine a harsh life lacking freedom and flexibility. Samurai viewed discipline in the opposite way. To them, discipline was not a chain. It was a way to free themselves from the exhaustion of constant decision-making. When a task has already been decided, the mind no longer wastes energy arguing. That energy is preserved for training, for presence, for focus. This is why samurai often appear calm and grounded. Not because they are stronger, but because they do not grind themselves down internally each day. For the ambitious person who struggles with procrastination, this is the critical point. The issue is not whether you have enough determination. The issue is whether you still allow emotion to control your actions. When emotion decides everything, progress is always unstable. When commitment replaces emotion, progress becomes steady. Samurai did not wait until they felt ready to step onto their path. They stepped forward first and allowed readiness to follow. They did not search for motivation. They created it through small actions that were never interrupted. Perhaps the path for the lazy but ambitious is just as simple. There is no need to change your life in a single day. No need for a dramatic awakening. Only a commitment small enough not to be skipped and strong enough to be repeated. Samurai did not become stronger each day. They simply refused to stop. And it was this quiet persistence that made them unshakable.